Let's talk about neuroticism. It's one of those words that just sounds bad. We immediately think of anxiety, negativity, all that stuff. And for the longest time, psychology has basically painted it as this purely dark, undesirable trait. But what if that's only half the story? Okay, let's really dive into this.
I mean, think about it. Have you ever been called a worrier? We all know someone, and hey, maybe it's you, who just seems to be wired to worry a little bit more than everyone else. But is that constant state of high alert just a weakness? Or could it actually be hiding some kind of unexpected strength?
So, to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to go back a bit, to the psychoanalyst Karen Horney. She had this fascinating idea that at the very core of neuroticism is this powerful, often totally unconscious drive to become an idealized self. A perfect, flawless version of who we think we should be.
Horney figured out there are three main ways people try to cope with the anxiety this creates. They might become super compliant, always trying to please others, or they might go the other way and get aggressive, needing to be the best, to win at all costs. And then there are those who just become detached, pulling away from everybody. Each one is just a different strategy to protect that fragile, perfect image of themselves.
And here's where the real trouble starts. It's when there's this giant gap between this perfect person we want to be and, well, who we actually are. Horney argued that this internal battle is the true source of all that negativity we associate with neuroticism, like lashing out at anyone or anything that threatens that fragile, perfect image.
So how in the world do you actually test a theory like that? Well, some clever researchers set up an experiment to see if this whole neurotic search for glory could trigger real, measurable aggression. So let's start by looking at that dark side.
Okay, so the setup for this was actually super clever. Participants played a simple computer game to earn some money. But here's the twist. A so-called opponent, which was really just the computer, would randomly steal their points. Then, the participant got a choice. They could press a button to steal a point back from the opponent. The catch? Doing this gave them absolutely nothing. No points, no money. It was literally just for revenge. That's it.
So they had 62 undergraduate students participate in this, and before they even started playing, everyone took a survey that measured their level of authenticity, basically how closely their real self aligned with their ideal self.
And, well, the results were pretty darn clear. The students who scored lower on authenticity, the ones with that bigger gap between their real and ideal selves, they were way more likely to press that button and engage in that pointless, punitive stealing. They were punishing their opponent just for the sake of punishing them.
And what the researchers concluded, it lined up perfectly with what Horney was saying all those years ago. They saw that when these inauthentic individuals feel threatened, they lash out with these self-serving punitive behaviors. It really shows you the lonely, alienating side of this whole thing.
So there you have it. Neuroticism can lead to aggression. Case closed, right? Well, hold on. Not so fast. Is that really all there is to being a worrier?
Yeah, it turns out neuroticism has these two totally different faces. We've just seen the dark side, the one that's rooted in defending that idealized self. But there's this completely unexpected upside, one that can lead to some surprisingly adaptive behaviors and even, get this, better physical health. And this brings us to this idea of the successful neurotic. What if that tendency to constantly scan for threats wasn't a bug, but like a feature? Researchers started wondering how this trait could actually be used for good. So in this other experiment, check this out. Participants were shown a bunch of words on a screen. They had to decide super quickly if a word was threatening, like knife, or not threatening, like stench. But the researchers weren't really interested in how fast they were. What they really wanted to see was what happened right after someone made a mistake. Now the smart thing to do, right? The adaptive response is to slow down a little on the next one to make sure you get it right.
And this is the real kicker. For the participants who scored high in neuroticism, the ones who instinctively slowed down after messing up, who were essentially learning from their mistakes in real time, they also reported experiencing less negative mood in their day-to-day lives. Their sensitivity, when they used it adaptively, actually made them feel better. They were being successful neurotics.
But wait, because the story gets even crazier. It turns out the benefits might not just be in your head. What if all that neurotic worry could actually translate into better physical health?
And this is where we get this amazing concept of healthy neuroticism. The core idea is that the vigilance and worry that come with neuroticism aren't inherently bad at all. It turns out the outcome depends entirely on what other traits it gets paired with.
So what's the magic ingredient? It's another big personality trait, conscientiousness. Being responsible, diligent, paying attention to details.
So what do you think happens when you combine the constant worry of a neurotic person with the responsible follow-through of a conscientious person?
Well, what you get is way better health behaviors. These are the people who worry about a lump or a weird cough, and that worry actually motivates them to make the doctor's appointment, to take their medicine, and to avoid unhealthy habits when they're stressed. Their anxiety is actually fueling productive, healthy actions.
So, to really put this to the test, researchers did this massive study on over 1,000 adults, and they collected everything: personality surveys, health reports, BMI scores, and even blood samples. They were specifically looking for a biological marker for inflammation called interleukin-6, or IL-6 for short.
And what they found was, honestly, it was stunning. Just like you'd expect, high neuroticism by itself was linked to higher inflammation. But the people who scored high on both neuroticism and conscientiousness, they had the lowest inflammation levels of everybody, even lower than the calm, conscientious people. It's like actual biological proof of healthy neuroticism at work.
So what does this all mean for us? It kind of suggests that we've been looking at neuroticism all wrong. Maybe the goal isn't to somehow stop worrying. Maybe the real goal is to learn how to worry well.
I mean, you can see the two paths so clearly here. Unproductive worry is all focused inward, right, on defending a fragile ego, and it leads to hostility. But productive worry is focused outward. It uses that same exact vigilance to solve real-world problems, and it leads to genuinely better health outcomes.
And this is really the crucial point here. For a lot of people, neuroticism is just a stable part of their personality. The goal isn't to try and get rid of it. The goal is to change what you do with that worry, to learn how to harness its energy and channel it into responsible, productive, conscientious action.
Which really leaves us with one last thought. Instead of asking ourselves, how do I stop being so anxious, maybe the much better question is this: how can I take my worry, this powerful engine for detecting threats, and turn it into my greatest strength?